Shocking discovery. Billionaire witnesses homeless boy's heartwarming dance for his paralyzed dad. Ethan twirled on the gritty sidewalk, his heart pounding in rhythm with the music thumping through his tiny portable speaker. Streetlights flickered against the twilight sky, a backdrop for the show unfolding on the avenue. With every leap, every spin, he poured his spirit into this makeshift performance, hoping to light up the heavy world of his father, who waited just around the corner. His feet danced with desperation and hope, knowing the joy it brought to his dad in the makeshift shelter where they made their home. The city buzzed with life, cars honked, and the sidewalk bustled, yet in this cacophony, Ethan stood out like a flickering flame. His bright smile cut through the gloom of the urban evening, capturing the attention of passers-by, many of whom hurried by unnoticed. When he danced, it wasn't just for survival. It was a lifeline woven from the threads of love and loyalty. One evening, as Ethan spun into another pirouette, he caught the eye of Jack Thompson, a billionaire who had once called this very street home. Jack had returned, burdened with memories, a heart heavy with the past he'd tried to escape. He watched, mesmerized, as Ethan became a blur of colors and emotions. The boy's energy made Jack ache with nostalgia. He recalled his own childhood, days spent dreaming amid the same economic struggles before fortune swept him away. "Look at him," Jack murmured, barely aware he had spoken aloud. The crowd murmured in surprise at his observation, strangers now united in their admiration for Ethan's spirited show. Their eyes glistened as they watched, some reaching for their wallets, others with tears bordering on their lashes. In that split second, a connection crackled between the boy's hopeful yearning and Jack's dormant conscience. Before he could step closer, whispers of change swept through the crowd. The city regulations threatened to clear Ethan and his father from their shelter, a harsh reminder of the bureaucracy they faced daily. Jack snapped back to the present, heart racing with the urgency of their situation. "I can't let this happen," he thought, fire igniting within him. He imagined the cold separation between Ethan and his father, the loss piercing through him like ice. Suddenly, he proclaimed, "We need to rally together for him and his dad." The murmurs turned into fervent agreement, the crowd swelling as concerned faces turned to Jack, seeking hope. But doubt clawed at Jack's confidence. Could their voices reach the ears of those in power who often muted the cries of the less fortunate? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jack gathered the community, chanting Ethan's name, adrenaline surged through him. Would their united strength be enough? The glimmer of hope was there, but the minutes slipped away, and Jack's resolve wavered. The boy's twinkling eyes and indelible spirit became his anchor in this chaotic battle. Could they emerge victorious in a system skewed against them? The crowd took a breath, hearts racing, not just for a child's dream but for the hope of a family. It brought them together, a community ready to challenge the silence, and they would fight. Jack felt the weight of every gaze on him as he stood at the center of the gathering crowd. Each face reflected a mix of sympathy and determination, flickering like the city lights around them. The voices, chanting Ethan's name, blended into a powerful melody of hope that made his heart race. He could almost believe they had the strength to move mountains or at least sway the hearts of those in charge. "Let us think about what we can do," Jack shouted, raising his arms in an attempt to gather their energy. A murmured agreement flowed through the crowd. He could see mothers clutching their children, a man with an old guitar tapping it lightly as if ready for a tune that would turn their voices into a song of change. A mother stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "There's a town hall meeting next week. We can all attend. If we make enough noise, they'll all have to listen." The suggestion struck Jack like a bolt of lightning. Town hall meetings were notorious for their dreary deliberations, but this was different. This was about people's lives. "Yes!" he exclaimed, his enthusiasm contagious. We'll gather everyone. Together, we'll share Ethan's story. We'll tell them what's happening here, on these streets. The crowd erupted into applause, the energy humming around them. But Jack's mind raced with thoughts of logistics, the fear of not being heard, the bureaucracy waiting behind closed doors. We need signs, and we need stories. Those who faced the same hardship should be there. We'll show them the community they're trying to tear apart. Suddenly, the music coming from Ethan's speaker shifted, a softer song beginning to play, a sweet lullaby that cloaked the rowdy chatter in a warm embrace. Ethan paused his dance momentarily, his wide eyes reflecting Jack's determination, and then continued moving with a newfound grace, embodying the fight ahead in every movement. Jack was mesmerized again by the boy's unyielding spirit, a fire that should never have to dim. "Look at him!" Jack called out, turning the crowd's attention to Ethan. "This boy deserves a chance. A father who loves him and the right to live without the shadow of eviction hanging over them. Let's make sure he gets it." A ripple of shouts followed. More people stepped forward, eager to contribute, a banner painter offering her creativity, a photographer willing to document their journey, and even a kind-hearted local cafe owner pledging to provide flyers and refreshments for the night of action. Together, they forged plans, anticipation soaring as they transformed dreams into reality. As the night deepened, a sense of community knitted tighter than before. Jack's heart swelled with pride. He hadn't just stirred the crowd, he'd ignited connections. But somewhere, deep within him, uncertainty lurked. Would their combined efforts stand against the city's indifference? Just then, Jack glanced down the street. A shadow loomed near the alley, a man in a suit, watching from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Something in the way this stranger observed made Jack's gut twist. "Who's that?" he murmured to himself, anxiety threading its way through the excitement. The crowd continued to cheer, voices rising in solidarity, but Jack's focus shifted. If someone in power was watching, they needed to be prepared. Their voices, their stories, could they truly make a difference? Little did they know, the fight was just beginning, and challenges awaited them that would test their resolve. Would Jack's newfound community be enough to withstand the battles ahead? Jack's heart thumped in his chest as he locked eyes with the man in the suit. The stranger's presence felt heavy, like a warning bell tolling in his gut. Who was this person, and why was he watching? As the crowd surged with enthusiasm, Jack tried to push aside his unease. They were on a mission, and he had to stay focused. Yet the man's gaze bore down on him like a spotlight. It was unnerving, almost predatory. "Everybody," he called, raising his voice above the din. "Let's stay united. We can't let anything distract us from our goal." The crowd nodded, their chants of Ethan's name growing louder again, but the figure remained. Jack's instincts kicked in. "Sarah!" he shouted, spotting the woman with the fierce expression a few steps away. "Can you find out who that guy is?" She nodded quickly and slipped away, moving gracefully through the throng of supporters. Jack turned back to the crowd, trying to amplify their energy once more. Stories poured from others as they shared their struggles, their hopes, the fear of what would happen if evictions escalated. Each voice felt like a brick laid in the foundation of a movement. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was a heavy sensation that clouded his mind. He scanned the crowd, hoping to see familiar faces, and finding comfort in that connection. The man in the suit seemed oddly out of place amidst this sea of passionate community members. Moments later, Sarah returned, her expression revealing all too much. "Jack, it's Charles Remington. He's a big-time developer." Jack's stomach dropped. Remington was notorious for pushing people out of neighborhoods to make way for shiny new projects. "What's he doing here?" "I don't know," she said, her voice low. "But he doesn't look happy." The realization sat heavily on Jack's shoulders. If Remington was watching, they needed to ramp up their efforts. He needed to rally everyone into a force that could not be ignored. "Okay, everyone," he shouted again, his voice cutting through the uncertainty. "We have to be louder. We can't let anyone think we're just going to roll over. We deserve to be heard. For Ethan and for everyone like him, we'll fight together. The crowd responded passionately, their voices rising to meet his call. Jack felt a spark ignite in the air, a shared understanding that their stories had power. Yet amidst the rallying cries, Jack felt a flicker of dread. What steps would Remington take now? Would he try to intimidate them? Silence them? Jack couldn't allow fear to seep in. They needed to act, and fast. A plan began to form in his mind. They would not only show up to the town hall meeting, they would bring the fight directly to those who thought they could erase their existence. As he turned to rally more supporters, Jack caught a glimpse of Remington moving through the crowd, his sharp, calculated movements setting him apart. The developer seemed to be engaged in conversation with some of the bystanders, a hint of a smirk on his face. "Stay alert," Jack warned Sarah and a few others. "We have to keep our eyes open. If he tries to underestimate us," a murmur rippled through the crowd, shifting toward an anxiety that Jack could sense lingering just beneath the surface. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about standing up against the very forces that tried to silence them all. But underneath Jack's determination, something darker spread. Could they confront a man like Remington? Did the power of their voices truly stand a chance against wealth and influence? As uncertainty settled around him, Jack wondered if their mounting courage could withstand the storm brewing right in front of them. In the swirling chaos of hope and fear, the moment lay heavy as they prepared for the confrontation ahead. What would they discover if the fight escalated? What lengths would everyone go to protect Ethan and their homes? Jack knew one thing for sure: they were only beginning to scratch the surface. Jack's heart raced, but he couldn't let it show. He turned back to the crowd, scanning their faces for signs of fear or doubt. Instead, he found determination reflected in their eyes, a flicker of defiance sparking between them. They were all in this fight together, drawing strength from one another. "All right, listen." Jack's voice rose above the noise again, steady and strong. "We need to mobilize. Tomorrow at the town hall, we'll make our stand. We can't let them sweep us under the rug. Each of you knows someone affected by this." Nods and murmured agreements spread like waves through the crowd. Suddenly, he spotted Ethan, the boy's bright eyes shining with innocence. How could anyone think of evicting such a sweet spirit? The image of Ethan's face fused with the weight of responsibility pressing down on Jack. This wasn't just about a protest. It was about lives being turned upside down. While Jack fueled the crowd's passion, Remington remained close, his presence looming like dark clouds threatening a storm. He could see pockets of the developer's followers gathering, their slick suits standing in sharp contrast to the worn jeans and t-shirts of Jack's supporters. "What do we do?" Sarah's voice broke through Jack's thoughts. "Keep pushing," Jack said, nodding toward Remington. "We need to drown him out. He wants to intimidate us, but we can't let him. Not now." He organized a chant, and the crowd began to repeat Ethan's name louder and louder, drowning out the whispers of fear. Energy surged. Jack's eyes narrowed on Remington, who was now scanning the demonstrators with an unsettling calmness. "Think about your homes," Jack shouted, trying to embed the urgency into every word. "Think about your friends. Think about Ethan. We have power in our numbers." Just as the crowd erupted again, their voices a roaring tide behind him, a figure appeared beside Remington, an older woman with sharp eyes and a warm, familiar smile. Jack's heart stuttered as he recognized her. It was Mrs. Larkin, a retired teacher from the neighborhood. "What is she doing with him?" Jack whispered to Sarah, a knot tightening in his stomach. "Maybe she's trying to reason with him?" she suggested hesitantly, though her eyes showed confusion. "Reason?" Jack said, disbelief creeping in. "With someone like Remington?" Despite the chaos, he felt a flicker of hope. If Mrs. Larkin, who had always carried a fierce love for the community, was there, maybe they had a chance to sway things in their favor. Jack squeezed through the crowd, his feet moving with purpose. "Wait!" he called out as he approached her. "Mrs. Larkin, what are you doing?" She turned, her expression stern yet soft. "Jack, dear, I was approached to help mediate. I thought perhaps maybe we could find a compromise. This doesn't have to end in conflict. Compromise? Jack stared incredulously. They want to bulldoze us. How can you reason with that? Behind them, Remington chuckled, a low, calculated sound. Ah, young man, fleeting emotions aren't they? You think this passion can hold a candle to real money? To power? Jack clenched his fists. Real power lies in the people. You might have money, but you don't own our hearts or our homes. Mrs. Larkin stepped closer to Jack, her gaze steady. Sometimes, Jack, listening can be just as powerful. It's about understanding the other side. A hush fell over the crowd as anticipation hung thick in the air. Would they listen? Would Remington even care about understanding them at all? Jack could feel the weight of their hopes pressing down on him, the stakes higher than ever. He knew in that moment that everything hinged on what happened next. Would they be heard? Or would this just lead to another failed negotiation? The answer loomed just ahead, as thick and heavy as the storm clouds darkening the sky. Would Jack be able to unite them in this moment of vulnerability, or would fear scatter their resolve? The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: this battle was far from over. Jack felt the silence around him, charged with expectation. Mrs. Larkin had always been a beacon of reason. The frail hope of a compromise lit a tiny flame in his heart, yet a nagging doubt whispered in the back of his mind. Could they truly bridge the chasm between community and corporate greed? Remington's laugh echoed through the air again, cutting through the tension. Power comes from dollars and influence, my dear. Not from dreams and wishes, he said, leaning in as if trying to intimidate them. Jack stood his ground, forcing the doubt aside. This was about more than just property. It was homes, stability, lives. Those dreams you dismiss? It's what makes our community a community. You can't buy that with money, Jack shouted, his voice now ringing out clear and defiant. Mrs. Larkin shifted, seemingly weighing her next words carefully. You're right, Jack, but maybe if we can find some middle ground. No. Jack interrupted, his urgency bubbling to the surface. We can't compromise with someone who doesn't see us, who sees only land to develop. Look where that's gotten us. We're fighting for more than homes. We're fighting for our lives. The crowd stirred, knowing his words held truth. Jack could see the embers of rebellion ignite in the gazes surrounding him. Remington, however, only smirked, his eyes glinting with amusement. Bravado won't win you this battle, young man. Just then, a small voice broke through the crowd. Ethan! It was his mother, pushing her way forward, her expressions a mixture of fear and resolve. Ethan is more than a name, more than a number to be crunched in a ledger. He deserves to be heard. Jack's heart swelled. He turned to the boy and his mother, their presence grounding him. This wasn't just about civic duty, it was personal. Every one of us has a story to tell. Jack shouted, letting the power of the moment fill him. This isn't just about us. We are here today because we believe in our rights, in each other. Let us make our voices heard, just like Ethan deserves. The crowd erupted again in a chant stronger, louder. Jack felt the ground shake under his feet. Each voice was a piece of the puzzle, creating a chorus of unity. But amidst the energy, he noticed something stir in Remington. The smirk faded slightly, replaced with a flicker of concern. Perhaps, for the first time, Jack was making him consider what lay ahead. Listen to them. Mrs. Larkin interjected, her voice rising above the noise. This community is built on those voices. You cannot ignore the heart, Remington. In that moment, hope surged through Jack. If they kept pushing, they might wear down the wall between them and the developers' camp. It wasn't over yet. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Remington's face, and for a split second, Jack thought they had the upper hand. But just as quickly as it came, the moment disappeared. Remington straightened, his eyes darkening again. If you think emotional appeals will sway me, you're sadly mistaken, he stated with a chilling calmness. Suddenly, something flashed in Jack's mind, an idea. What if we share those stories? What if we showed them what's at stake? He turned to the crowd, searching for support. "Ethan! Would you share your story?" All eyes fell on the young boy, who stood there staring wide-eyed, trembling with excitement and anxiety. His mother knelt beside him, whispering encouragement. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just speak from your heart." Jack held his breath, the crowd quieting as they focused on Ethan. This was more than a strategy, it was a chance for them to connect on a human level with Remington and his team. With every heartbeat, the tension mounted. Would Ethan's innocence and bravery be enough to touch even the coldest of hearts? As the boy stepped forward, Jack's hope and fear collided, bracing for what came next in this fragile moment. Could compassion directly challenge a billion-dollar empire? The answer was in Ethan's hands now. The stakes had never felt higher. Ethan took a deep breath, his small chest rising and falling as he stepped to the front of the crowd. The sun glinted off his unruly hair, casting a halo around him that somehow made him look even more vulnerable. Jack felt his heart pound, a mix of pride and anxiety swirling inside him. Ethan's voice was shaky at first, but in that moment, he looked up, catching sight of his mother's supportive smile. He steadied himself, hands gripping the edges of his shirt. "My name is Ethan. I'm 10 years old." The crowd listened closely, the earlier chants fading to a hushed reverence. Jack couldn't help but notice the way people leaned in, perceiving Ethan as a beacon of their struggles. Ethan took another breath, finding his rhythm. "I live with my mom and dad. My dad, he got hurt. He can't walk anymore. He used to help us with everything. He was strong, and he always made us feel safe. But now sometimes we don't have enough money for food or for rent." Jack's heart broke for the boy. He saw tears well up in the eyes of some gathered. They weren't just listening to Ethan, they were feeling his pain. "I hate that we might lose our home," Ethan continued, his voice gaining strength. "I love my dad, and I want him to get better. I want him to see us dance in the living room like we used to. I want to feel normal again." The raw honesty of his words struck Jack like a thunderbolt. Suddenly, it wasn't just about real estate anymore, it was about lives intertwined and dreams at risk of being crushed. He could see it, the glimmer of recognition in the faces of the crowd. Ethan's voice had unlocked something deep inside them, a shared understanding of loss. As Ethan spoke, Jack noticed Remington's eyes narrowing. The smirk returned, but it looked different now, tinged with annoyance. The billionaire leaned closer to his team, whispering something, his body language suggesting he was irritated by the unexpected turn of events. "Ethan," his mother whispered, her hands trembling by her sides. "You're doing so well. Keep going, baby." Ethan nodded, spurred by her encouragement. "I want to tell you about the kids in my neighborhood. We play soccer in the park every day. We all live in the same building. We're friends. We share our snacks and our toys." His voice carried a passion that struck chords in everyone's heart. "We don't care about money. We care about each other." The crowd murmured in agreement. Jack felt the energy shift. There was a sense of solidarity forming, the idea that they were all in this together. "Please," Ethan's voice quivered, his eyes darting toward Remington. "You can't just see buildings and money. You have to see us. We're real people, with our own stories. My dad has a story too." That plea sliced through the air. Suddenly, the crowd erupted with applause. They were no longer fractured. They were united by a boy's courage in the face of adversity. Remington's irritation was palpable. "Is this really your strategy?" he jeered, but his voice lacked the confidence it had possessed before. The crowd's clapping swelled. Jack sensed the shift. It wasn't the only hope they were feeling now. It was determination. They knew they couldn't allow Remington to walk away unaffected. "Let us show them who we are," someone shouted, igniting another wave of support. Jack glanced at Mrs. Larkin, who looked at him with a fierce intensity. "This is it, Jack. This is our moment." The momentum was strong, but Jack felt the weight of uncertainty still lurking. Could they truly challenge someone so entrenched in power? As he looked at Ethan, still standing strong, he felt a fierce drive rise within him. With the roar of the crowd echoing, Jack saw his path forward. We will share every story. We will make sure our voices drown out the greed. But as he finished, he caught sight of Remington's expression. Anger, yes, but there was something else there too. Fear? Desperation? Before he could fully process what it meant, he knew things were about to escalate. What would Remington do next? The stakes had never been higher. Ethan stood before the crowd, his heart pounding like a drum, but now the expressions surrounding him fueled his spirit. The applause felt like a warm blanket, wrapping him in support. Jack could see the boy's earlier vulnerability transform into a determined fire, something deep and powerful. All of us here deserve to be seen, Ethan shouted, his voice ringing out over the clamor. I want my dad to see this too. I want him to know that we are fighting for him. The crowd roared back, their voices a wave of encouragement. Jack felt the electricity in the air. The tension thickened, almost palpable, like a rubber band stretched to its limit. Would Remington snap? Enough of this. Remington's voice sliced through the fervent cheers like a knife. His face was set in a hard grimace, yet Jack could see something else lurking behind that icy facade, a flicker of doubt. You think your little stories will change anything? Money talks. Ethan's radiant joy dimmed momentarily at the billionaire's harsh words, but he quickly gathered his courage again. We're not just stories, we're real. And when real people come together, we can't be ignored. Jack took a step forward, emboldened by Ethan's bravery. You think you can bully us into silence? He yelled back at Remington. You're wrong. We're more than numbers in your ledger. The crowd surged with energy. Words of support flew from the multitude like fireflies lighting up a dark night. It was beautiful and chaotic, and Jack felt hope blossom within him again, pushing down the worry that had taken root moments ago. Ethan turned to face Remington squarely. You can't take our stories away. You can't erase the love, the friendships, or the community we have. His eyes, filled with fervor, locked onto Remington's, challenging but open. Stories don't pay bills, kid, Remington snapped, but Jack saw that the billionaire's voice was growing thicker, as if caught in a net of his own making. Maybe they don't, Ethan replied, his small yet powerful voice soaring over the crowd's growing support, but stories remind us of what truly matters. Love, kindness, and family can't be measured in dollars. The crowd erupted again, cheering for Ethan, chanting his name, and Jack could feel the shift. Something was cracking in Remington's armor. The billionaire had always imagined himself the king of this urban jungle. But here, in front of Ethan, he was starkly human, exposed. Remington waved a hand dismissively, trying to regain control amid the rising tide of emotion. But what else could he say? The crowd was no longer just a group of spectators. They had become a force, a movement. Suddenly, a woman near the front shouted, "Let us show him what we really stand for." Her voice echoed with fervor, igniting the throng. Jack watched as people began to pull out their phones, taking photos and videos, capturing the moment. Ethan turned to Jack, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. What if they don't listen? They will, Jack assured him, gripping the boy's shoulder. Because you've given them a reason to care. Just as various voices began to chant, "We are here. We are strong." Jack couldn't help but wonder, would it be enough? As the atmosphere thickened with fervent ambition and urgent despair, Jack caught a glimpse of Remington slipping out of the spotlight, retreating with his team. A sense of foreboding washed over him. The fight was far from over, and Remington wouldn't go quietly. What was the billionaire planning next? Jack's gut twisted with unease, a palpable threat lurking just beneath the surface. Could they truly stand strong against an opponent who valued wealth over humanity? Or would Ethan's courage spark a new determination that could turn the tide once and for all? As the crowd continued to cheer, Ethan felt buoyed by their energy. It was as if his words had taken flight, soaring high above the doubts that once weighed him down. He scanned the faces around him, searching for familiar grins. His mother, standing near the front, her eyes glistening with pride, nodded encouragingly. In that moment, despite the looming threat of Remington, Ethan knew he wasn't alone. "Let us keep this going," a voice shouted from the back. It was Margaret, a woman whose family had faced eviction just weeks ago. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every single person down on their luck, forgotten by those who hold all the power. A wave of agreement swept through the crowd. Jack felt his heart race once again, this time with hope. Each voice blended together to make a powerful choir, rising against the oppressive weight of indifference. People began sharing quick stories of resilience and love, lifting their voices over one another, fueling a fire that seemed to intensify with every beat of Ethan's heart. Suddenly, Ethan took a deep breath, a new idea sparking in his mind. "Let us show him our spirit. Everyone, grab a partner," he called, excitement bubbling over. Jack glanced at Ethan in confusion. "Wait, what are you?" Ethan ran to the nearest person, a young woman with a determined expression. They joined hands, and the chain of connections quickly expanded as others followed suit. The crowd shifted, forming a large circle, arms interlocked like a web of unity. "What are we doing?" Jack asked as he was pulled into the circle. "Dancing," Ethan shouted over the growing noise. The people nearest to him started to move, their feet tapping in rhythm, swaying in celebration of what they stood for. Together, they began a simple dance, a joyful celebration of community, grit, and tenacity. Laughter spilled across the gathering. It cascaded over fences and walls, as if the very essence of love and togetherness was spilling into the streets. Jack marveled at Ethan. The boy was radiant, anchored in belief that they belonged to something bigger, something worth fighting for. Those who once felt defeated now danced with fervor, letting the music of their spirits drown out the heaviness of despair. But amidst this powerful buoyancy, Jack's gaze wandered to where Remington had been. The billionaire and his entourage had returned, standing off to the side, eyes wide with confusion and disbelief. Jack could see a storm brewing in Remington's expression. This wasn't the response he'd expected. "Who do they think they are?" Remington growled to his advisors, striking his fist against his palm. Jack's heart sank. Would the billionaire retaliate? Anger could rear its head, a deep-seated fear gnawing at him, a fear that the momentum they had built could be shattered if Remington unleashed his fury. The beat of the dance continued, echoing a chant of resilience, yet Jack felt a ripple of uncertainty. What radical move would Remington take to dampen their spirit? It wouldn't just be words, it would be something more calculated, sinister. He glanced at Ethan, who was engulfed in the thrill of a joyous moment. "This could backfire," Jack muttered, his voice barely a whisper, immersed in worry. "Sometimes it has to," Ethan replied, determination swirling in his eyes, to spark change. But would just the spark be enough against the looming storm? As the music played on and the crowd danced, Jack found his heart teetering between hope and anxiety. The battle was still to come, and all they had now was this moment. Would Remington unleash chaos against the unity they deformed? And if he did, how would Ethan respond when the tides turned? The energy in the air was electric, a vibrant tapestry woven from laughter and movement. The crowd, now in full swing, had formed a circle, bouncing together, arms locked as if to fend off the outside world. Joy spilled into the streets, pushing back against the shadows that lurked at the edges. Ethan spun around, his laughter infectious, a bright spot in the midst of rising tension. He felt alive, fueled by their shared defiance. "Keep it going! Feel the rhythm!" he shouted, as he twirled his partner, a young mother who had fought through her own darkness to make it here today. Her smile was wide, her eyes sparkling with a fierce hope. But amidst the joyous chaos, Jack could feel a heavy weight drifting over them, a storm on the brink. Remington stood like a granite statue just outside the circle, seething. He glanced at his advisors, the frown etched deep into his brow as he plotted his next move. "Ethan!" Jack shouted over the music, "we need to watch out. He's not just going to stand there. Let him come!" Ethan called back, a boldness in his voice. "We've come this far. We have to show him we won't back down." With each beat of the drum reverberating through the crowd, Jack felt torn between Ethan's optimism and the reality of their circumstances. They were up against a powerful opponent, and while unity was their strength, it was also a glaring target. What would happen when Remington decided to strike? The joyous dance continued to gain momentum, drawing in more people as they passed by, their faces lighting up as they joined in. Each fresh dancer added fuel to the roaring bonfire of resistance, amplifying the message they all shared. But in the back of Jack's mind, he could not shake the rumbling feeling that something dark was coming. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the edges of the crowd. Jack turned to see Remington's entourage moving in, faces twisted into scowls, determined to disrupt their celebration. The music faltered, the joyous rhythm halting as the first aggressive shouts cut through the air. "Get out of the way! This is private property!" A man barked, pushing through to the front. The crowd wavered, their unity tested. Jack could see the uncertainty flickering among the dancers, just as the energy began to shift from jubilation to fear. He instinctively tightened his hold on Ethan's arm. "What do we do?" Ethan stood firm, a beacon of calm. "We hold our ground. This is our place. They can't take that from us." As Remington stepped forward, his gaze dark and calculating, he raised a hand, silencing the protests with an air of authority. "You think a dance will change anything?" he snapped, a cold smile spreading across his lips. "You think this makes you strong?" But before he could continue, a sudden voice rang out from the back. "It's not just a dance, it's hope. Hope for all of us." It was Margaret again, her spirit unyielding. The words cascaded over the crowd like a wave, rallying their resolve. Jack watched as faces filled with determination, the initial fear morphing into defiance. He felt something shift within himself, the grip of worry loosening as he realized they were not alone in this fight. They were connected, heart to heart, against an overwhelming force. But just as the energy began to surge back, Remington's eyes narrowed. "Then let us see how strong you really are." His voice dropped to a menacing whisper, the crowd now under the heavy weight of his presence. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. What did he mean? What was coming next? In that anxious moment, he glanced at Ethan, whose unwavering spirit still shone brightly. Would their ephemeral courage hold strong against the tide of a billionaire's wrath? As the crowd gripped their resolve, ready for whatever Remington's next move would be, a sudden crash echoed through the air, reshaping the course of the day. What would they face when the dance turned into a battle? And could they withstand the storm that was brewing just beyond their circle of hope? The crash reverberated through the air, and for a heartbeat, everyone froze. Eyes darted to the source of the noise. A barricade had been toppled, remnants of what had once marked a boundary now strewn across the sidewalk. Shouts erupted as chaos threatened to envelop the unity they had built. Ethan's heart raced. The swirling energy from before felt fragile, unraveling like a single thread pulling loose. Fear crept back into the faces of the crowd. Jack squeezed Ethan's shoulder, grounding him. "Stay strong. They want us to scatter, but we want tea." Just then, Remington's voice cut through the confusion, dripping with mockery. "Look at this. A kid's dance party. You think you can stand a chance against real resources and power?" He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. Jack took a step forward, channeling every ounce of courage he had left. "You don't know what it means to fight for something real. This is our home, our community." Jack shouted, his voice steady and bold. With the crowd rallying behind him, the rhythm of their hearts pulsed through the air like a drum. Ethan felt it too, the awakening that surged with every chorus of defiance. He glanced around, trying to reignite that spark of collective purpose. "Everyone, hold hands!" Ethan called out, urgency spilling into his words. The dancers blinked, momentarily captivated by the sincerity in his voice. Slowly, they linked together again, forming a thick barrier of intertwined arms. "We're stronger together!" The crowd responded, a wave of solidarity coursing through them. "Stronger together! Stronger together!" they chanted. Jack felt the power of their unity swell, a shield forming between them and the looming threat of Remington. The billionaire smirked, stepping closer to the barricade of humanity before him, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can stop progress? This unity of yours won't hold up against the machinery I can unleash." But the crowd did not falter. They stood firm, fear receding, transformed into a fierce resilience that crackled like electricity. As the chant intensified, Ethan felt a new rhythm pulse through him, igniting his spirit. "Listen!" he shouted, voice filling with clarity. "We don't need to fight rage with rage. We fight with love." Around him, heads nodded, and hands tightened their grips. The energy transcended fear, pooling into something transcendent. Everyone here had a story. They had much at stake, not just the battle against Remington but for the light they saw in each other. "And love can't be bulldozed," Jack added, driven by Ethan's boldness. Realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't just about resisting an eviction, it was about advocating for dignity. Each passerby, every neighbor, every twist of fate had led them here. "Ethan! Do it!" someone shouted. The crowd erupted in exuberance, calling for the boy to return to the heart of the dance. With the insistence of his friends wrapping around him like a hug, he bolted forward. He spun, launching himself into an exhilarating performance, playing the human spirit like a symphony. "Dance, Ethan! Show him!" they cried. The circle erupted into laughter and joy, their bodies swaying. Jack felt tears sting his eyes at the beauty of it all. This was an act of defiance, a proclamation that their spirits could not be stolen. Remington's smirk faltered, confusion flashing across his face. The billionaire suddenly looked small, trapped between raging emotions and propelling hope. Jack seized the moment. "Do you hear that? This is our strength, our stories brought to life. We're not just properties to be exploited." Ethan's movements were filled with exuberance as he danced, pouring every ounce of heart into it. The crowd sang along, their voices entwined in an explosion of joy and resilience. Suddenly, the air felt electric with possibility. If there was no turning back for them, what could Remington do? He was a stone facing a wave crashing against the shore. "What's happening here is unstoppable," Jack declared, raising his voice. "You think you can intimidate us?" he challenged Remington. Directly, a fire ignited in his belly. The crowd responded, their hands riding the rhythm, feet pounding the pavement with unyielding energy. "You'll think again," Remington hissed, now truly rattled. The mood had shifted, so had the atmosphere. He could feel the tremors of change pressing on him like a tidal wave. Ethan paused mid-spin, his chest rising and falling, yet his gaze remained fierce. "You can take your money and power, we will keep our hearts. No building can replace what we share here." With this last declaration, something shifted in the crowd. Hands gripped hands tighter. Eyes locked in fierce determination. Remington took a step back, the uncertainty in his expression illuminating the room. In that moment, the heaviness lifted, the collective strength rippling through the community, a force that couldn't be ignored. One whisper led to another, a glorious declaration of resiliency. Remington had underestimated their unity, their spirit. "Let us keep the dance alive. Fight for our voices. Fight for Ethan!" someone yelled, and with that clarity, they created a ripple of sound, echoing through the streets. Slowly, the rhythmed laughter and chants transformed into something magical. It was an anthem of community that hope should never be silenced. Jack's heart swelled as he joined in the chant, hands held tight, surrounded by people who had come together to rise against the storms of oppression. And as the world watched, a glimmer of change began to take root, a rising tide of love and unity pushing back against the shadows. They were ready to face the next storm, stronger than ever before. So watch out, world. The echoes of laughter and love might just be the force that changes everything. If this moment moved you, remember, every story needs your support. You need to subscribe now and stay part of every leap forward we make together. Leave a like now to shout out how much this message resonates and feeds the fire in your heart. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about how you can be part of this transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of community. Don't wait not even one more second, join us on this incredible journey.